It's time for myself and the Dub Nation to face it. The season the Warriors have been having so far is disappointing, to say the least. Does that mean it's time to blow it up? Trade the young guys to win now? Not necessarily, but it isn't as far off the table than I would imagine before the season started. Today, we're going to be dissecting the truth behind Golden State's 4-7 start. As a longtime Warriors fan, since 2015, I've grown greatly accustomed to winning. Jokes aside, as even I can admit that I'm a bandwagon, it has been quite troubling seeing the Warriors get off to this sluggish start. I can't remember the statistic verbatim, but I think it was something like this is the quickest the Warriors have reached 7 losses out of their 4 recent championship seasons. Additionally, Steph has been the saving grace of this nightmarish start, averaging 33, 7, and 7 with a little help from Mr. Consistent Andrew Wiggins, which, if you watch Wiggs with the Timberwolves, you'll get why that's just so jarring to say in reference to him. The usual suspects, i.e. Clay, Draymond, and I guess Looney, they've all been underwhelming for their own reasons. I can live with Looney's shortcomings, but Clay's inefficiency this far with 36% from the field and 32% from 3, plus Draymond's defensive woes have made it that much harder for the team this season. And finally, the young guys who have been extremely underwhelming. As someone who waited on and defended Wiseman constantly these past couple years, that one stings the most. But seeing Kerr take minutes from Kuminga and Moody has just been sad and disheartening, straight up. It's almost as if it simply just doesn't make sense, especially seeing where these guys were at just last season. All that being said, of course, much of the media and NBA fans have jumped to the conclusion that the Warriors are cooked. Overreaction? Probably. But that's what this video aims to discover. Is the Warriors championship hangover real? Where does it show itself the most? Is it here to stay? And if it is, what's my most educated guess on how they can rid themselves of it? That's it for the background info. Let's get straight into the Warriors' woes, which is a cool piece of alliteration that I hope I only have to utter just this once. So, we touched on this somewhat, but what exactly are the Warriors struggling with 11 games into the young season? Well, to be honest, a multitude of things. But for the sake of organization and this video, we will be examining the 2 most prevalent things holding this team back so far. One being the main thing, I believe, with the team's culture being fractured. Sure, Draymond can assure the media time and time again that their recent woes are not a motivation issue, but it is glaringly obvious if you look in the right places. Secondly, the young guys have either been unable to take that next step, or they're not being given the proper opportunities, and I don't know which is worse. So, starting off with my main point, and what I think is the forefront detriment to the Warriors at this moment, their culture is just gashed right now and unrecognizable. Let me explain. What's the first thing you think of when someone asks what the Warriors' motto is? Their mantra. There probably is a lot of answers out there, but for me, I think of strength in numbers. That's significant because what happened over the offseason? Oh, we lost key rotational players like GP2, GTA, and Damian Lee. Now, I kind of expect that at least 75% of the people watching to be like, key players? Like, are you kidding me? Well, maybe not on the court, but I think the Warriors fan base and front office severely underrated the impact of good teammates. Sure, the loss of these guys opened up minutes for Moody, Kuminga, and Wiseman, but what do we lose? Well, a subtle loss, but watch the bench reaction to the Warriors' recent win over the Kings. That's what we lost. Camaraderie, togetherness. 2 things that damn near absolutely required to win a championship. What's another key element of the Warriors culture? Having fun. What was once a team lauded and applauded for their willingness to share the ball and in turn making a joyful work environment where everyone can get their numbers while winning? Now, I don't see the joy, I don't see the ball movement, I don't see the shared success. Let's be real, the 2022-23 Warriors thus far would be better off renamed to the Steph Show. That's not a diss, but when your point guard is the leader for points, rebounds, and assists on 50, 40, 90 splits, that's the narrative that will come out of that. Sure, Steph is an alien, but it's troubling that he has to use his alien ability against non-contenders like Charlotte or the Kings. No offense, guys. Lastly, what's been a key component of all 4 championship teams that the current Warriors squad severely lacks? If you answered quality Iguodala minutes, you aren't necessarily wrong, but I was going more for a top 15 defense. Go ahead and guess what the Warriors rank on defense through the season's first 11 games. Was it dead last? Was it number 30 and there's only 30 teams in the NBA? Then you're correct. And I don't have the tools to definitively analyze whether or not the Warriors' poor defensive numbers are a sham or have merit, but there was an important anecdote that was relevant when examining our defense. It goes like this. Don't judge Draymond on his numbers. Judge him by the team's defensive performance. I'm not saying it's all Draymond's fault, but when defense is close to the only positive outside staggered moments of playmaking in his game, and that's exactly what they're the worst at currently, it's no wonder why a lot of eyes are on him during their recent struggles. There's more, but I'll end up going on and on and on. Instead, let's examine our second point. The young guys on Golden State simply gotta step it up. Straight up. This is most telling in Steph's transformation to chill, funny guy who lets Draymond and Klay do the yelling, to being the one legit screaming at his teammates on court for their ineptitude at times. Poole doesn't worry me as much, as he's more or less got my trust when it comes to playoffs and so forth, although maybe I should hold him more accountable given that he has the second worst plus minus through 11 games of the season with negative 97. And that's not on the team, that's in the league, but you get my point. I'm really focusing on the trio of Kuminga, Moody, and Wiseman here, and let's not eviscerate these guys. This is why it can be so difficult to rebuild a team in the midst of a dynasty. Young guys sometimes need years to develop before they can be true championship pieces. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Even so, there's a chance that all three of these guys right the ship before the end of the season. So like I said, take this with a grain of salt and realize it's not a code red for the Warriors youth just yet. Starting off with the most concerning, let's preface this with Wiseman being a number 2 overall pick and then following his draft selection with 2 years of rehab for his torn meniscus. Wiseman was advertised to the fanbase as a 6'11 center who can act as a defensive interior anchor while also being able to not clog the paint thanks to his outside scoring ability. Admittedly, he was super raw leaving Memphis, the college he played at, where he didn't even get to finish the season due to some NCAA violations. But that wasn't too big a deal considering the Warriors had so many able pieces already. But now that it's been 2 years, it's beginning to feel like a confrontation of this issue will be required soon. In Wiseman's first 10 games, he averaged 7, 4, and 1 in 14 minutes a game. I'd expect better numbers from a lot of people, including guys on our own team like Looney. If that's not bad enough, maybe he's providing a lot on the defensive side or spacing the floor on the offensive side, but he ranks at a negative 69 on plus minus this season. A big issue is deciding how to stagger the minutes between Looney and Wiseman, as they can get in each other's way at times if they play together, and if apart, then you eliminate the strengths of your small ball lineups because Looney and Wiseman combine for about 40 minutes each night, which leaves just about 8 minutes where you can have a lineup of Steph, Klay, Poole, Wiggs, and Dre, which as you can guess is not ideal. Now, that might lead you to believe that one of the two needs to be moved, and you might be right, but we'll save our prediction for that for our next section. On to Kuminga, this one's probably the most perplexing. Kuminga fills a needed spot for our wing depth in our second unit, but even so, Kuminga has only put up 5, 2, and 1 in 14 minutes a game with a plus minus of negative 59. Kuminga was the guy I was probably the highest on after last season, and I thought his next step was going to be evident this year. Many have been comparing the early days of Kuminga's role with the squad to Draymond's when he was a sophomore player, but aside from having similar builds and positions, I don't really compare their playstyles. I will give a small caveat to Kuminga though, because his spot in the rotation has been a bit wonky due to Kerr's weird commitment to play vets like JaMychal Green and Ty Jerome. Although 2 days ago, Kerr stated that Kuminga's spot in the rotation will be consistent as we push further into the season, so Warriors faithful hope to see Kuminga's impact improve as time goes on. And finally, I wanted to mention Moody because he too seems unmotivated and is lacking that next step that fans expected to see so far into the season. Out of all three players, I actually prefer Moody's energy and defensive prowess on the court, which is shocking because he probably has the least amount of tools out of the three. I think Kerr thinks much of the same, reflective of that is Moody pulling 17 minutes per game, the most minutes out of their sophomore players. Now, Moody still needs to improve on his production, only putting up 6, 2, and 1 in his 11 games, although his plus minus sits at negative 1.7. So we can give him some credit for being the best of the worst, I guess. That sounds bad, but you know what I mean. So I want to remind you guys that while the young guys' production so far into the season has been troubling, and that's undeniable. I'd be far, far away from giving up on any of them, even Wiseman. Does that mean trades should be out of the question? No, but I also don't want to act like the Warriors' struggles are solely on their shoulders. So I basically laid out the two pillars of the Warriors' pitfalls thus far, but that's not to say they can't right this ship by any means. 4-7 is by no means a point of no return when it comes to playoff contention, but I think the Warriors are more concerned with making sure they put their squad in the best position to win now and for years to come. Does that move exist? Or are we better off just staying put and hoping there's more in store for these young guys? Well, let's look at a few possible scenarios. To begin, I want to preface this by saying I'm not advocating for any of these trades just outright. There's just too much variability that would make me hesitant to say any trade that involves 2 to 3 lottery picks on their rookie deals would be advantageous. That being said, it's still fun to theorize, and especially as a Warriors fan, I'm nearly at the point where I'ma hop on the ESPN trade machine myself. Shoot, even general manager Bob Myers said they're quote open to anything regarding trades, especially if the team were to fall more than 10 games under 500. Because of that narrow possibility, we'll be going over packages ranging from splashes, calling for all-star additions to the smaller scale moves that could really round out their bench, which they need badly. The first one includes star big man Anthony Davis of all people being sent a little further north in return for Draymond, 2 players in the grouping of Kuminga, Moody, and Wiseman, as well as the first overall pick. Now, I'm not gonna lie, there are a lot of issues with this trade, but it still gets me excited at the prospect of it. Firstly, this would hurt the Warriors' depth, but hopefully give the Warriors the interior presence the squad has been vying for years. Additionally, Davis's injury proneness is a serious concern, and this basically assumes the Lakers are closing the book on this chapter of the LeBron-AD combination. While AD has been on the downswing of his career for the past couple of seasons, check out the video I made on that a few weeks ago, I have a hard time believing the Lakers would be okay moving off of him, considering all they had to give up to get him. I think of the 3 trades we're going to discuss, this one's the most far-fetched. But funnily enough, it wouldn't surprise me much if it went through. Surprisingly, I think the real allure from the Warriors side would be getting Draymond out of the locker room. Don't get me wrong, as a Warriors fan for years, I've gone to hell and back defending Draymond through thick and thin. The pool incident was just the final straw for me. Us having the worst defense in the league doesn't help his case much either, but what do I know? Although exciting, I still don't think the addition of AD would make them a shoo-in for the Western Conference win. Last note on this one, seeing LeBron and Draymond on the same team would be absolutely atrocious and extremely fun at the same time. Okay, moving on. The second trade proposal, a definite smaller scale one, would be moving Wiseman and a second round pick for the Spurs' Jakob Poeltl. I definitely said that wrong. I'm gonna call him Jakob though. I think Jakob has a lower ceiling than Wiseman, but for a team who just wants to win now, you can't really afford to take chances on boom or bust prospects. I think out of all 3 trade ideas, this one's the most likely, half because blockbuster trades almost never happen, and I can see a future of Wiseman continuing to struggle, and so the Warriors are prepared to cut weight at 3 years of play. I think this type of trade could be beneficial for both parties if Jakob could contribute immediately and Wiseman turns out to be a strong piece of the Spurs rebuild. Jakob is the kind of do-it-all type of player too, from inside-out scoring, solid rebounding, versatile defense, and the occasional assist. He can be the guy to bolster the second unit enough to preserve Steph's forehead veins. You likely called it when you saw the title and thumbnail combo on this video, but it would be trading the farm back to the Nets for KD. Yeah, I am not afraid to say it. And yes, it would likely include one of Clay, Dre, and Poole, and the entire trio of the young guys, Moody, Wiseman, Kuminga. I also wouldn't be surprised if they threw a pick or 2 on top of that, knowing how much Brooklyn wants for the Slim Reaper. This would also take the Nuts closing the door on their championship window with Kyrie and KD, which is a very real possibility at this point. I can see a type of mutual feeling akin to the LeBron and Kyrie split where it's like, I left and saw maybe it wasn't as green on the other side, and so they're happy to reunite and go on to win a couple more rings or whatever. Imagine if Steph got 6 rings. Man, oh, how I'd be insufferable. But anyways, Obviously, losing depth doesn't matter much when adding a transcendent first ballot Hall of Fame, top 13 player all time type guy like Kevin Durant. If you're the Warriors and you make this move, however, you got to come to terms with not having the fluid transition of winning from the Steph era into the new one. Even if they were to acquire Anthony Davis, I guess they could have 6 or 7 years left in his career, give or take, and that's given that he resigns with them, so you never really know. But let's be real, the real issue is good luck drafting another Steph so you can go to all these playoff appearances in the first place. If you got Steph, it's simple. You win as much as you can while you got him. Any other choice is nonsense. Well, that's a few roads the Warriors front office could explore if they believed a roster shakeup is necessary. But let's remember, the key pieces on this roster already proved to have what it takes to defeat a championship hangover. Maybe not in 2016, that one still stings, but they did it in 2018. Sure, maybe having Kevin Durant is the sole reason for that, seeing what happened to them in 2016 and how this year is going thus far. However, I'd like to examine the Warriors 2018 and their ensuing repeat to find out not only if they're facing similar challenges, and if so, what steps are vital in order to overcome the hangover. Who knows? Maybe a roster change is the last thing Bay Area basketball needs. So like I said, this isn't the first time the Warriors have been faced with this much more difficult than meets the eye dilemma. Thanks to this Bleacher Report write-up that specifically highlights the blueprint to the Warriors championship repeat in 2018, in the article, author Zach Buckley pointed out the 5 foundational pillars for that repeat championship, with it going as follows. 1. Flex strength in numbers muscle. Number 2. Avoid unnecessary distractions. Number 3. Lucky health breaks. Number 4. Have an MVP finalist. And number 5. Defeat complacency. Yeah, you can probably see where this is going, but nonetheless, let's dissect. So for 1, flex strength in numbers muscle, which essentially means improve upon our bench depth. Yeah, losing Gary Payton II, Lee, and Juan Toscano Anderson haven't much helped us on that forefront, so that's 1 strike for this so-called blueprint. For the record, after the Warriors 2017 ring, they replaced Ian Clark, Matt Barnes, and James Michael McAdoo with the trio of Omri Caspi, rookie Jordan Bell, and Nick Young. Maybe not a vast improvement, but a clear step up when compared to the bench acquisitions and losses of the now. Moving on to point number 2. Avoid unnecessary distractions. Yeah, this one we failed before even the start of the season, so don't gotta talk about this one much. Moving on. Now, point number 3. Lucky health breaks. So far so good. There have been a couple of scares with Steph, especially seeing him limping during the Kings game. I'd also say the days of getting 79 plus games from Clay or Dre is long gone, but what do I know? Additionally, Iguodala has been out since the start of the season, which is really a positive. We need him around for his locker room and sideline presence if anything. And DiVincenzo hurt his hamstring and has been out a few games too, but plans to return soon. So this one's kind of tracking so far, even though it's still really early in the season. It'd be a near miracle if no major rotational players miss a significant amount of time this year, but every team can say that. So moving on. Point number 4, having an MVP finalist. Well, Steph has been fitting the bill to a T. Can you say he's the best player in the league? Nah, not really. But I'd say he's easily an MVP finalist, but that's just by my estimation. Numbers speak for themselves though. So that means so far, the Warriors are 2 for 4 on their championship repeat blueprint. Not great, but the third one could be the deciding factor, so let's see. The number 5 point in the blueprint was win the fight against complacency. You probably could have guessed this, but yeah, the Warriors have been struggling with this so far. This is the most evident in the visual frustration on the faces of the vets and the lack of urgency shown by the young guys, plus just overall numbers from everyone not named Steph Curry or Andrew Wiggins. One vital point to remember is that when the Warriors repeated in 2018, that team was mostly comprised by vets. Sure, they were all pretty young when it came to league success, but each of them knew what it took to find the motivation to climb that mountain again when you've already summited it. Not everyone is cut from a winner's cloth. Not saying their young guys aren't, but just saying something to pay attention to. So that brings us to a measly 2 out of 5 rate when it comes to replicating this repeat championship run. Not too pretty. Now that being said, there can be a lot of fluidity to this scoring. If the young guys commit and start performing better, maybe the Warriors make a helpful trade, but I'm unfortunately a part of the camp that believes the Warriors can't simply rely on Steph's greatness to carry them through the regular season again. Maybe through the playoffs, but regardless, changes need to be made in some aspect in order to help get this team back on track. That pretty much concludes my thoughts on the Warriors in the midst of their championship hangover. Guys, there is an absolute reason why the phrase "it's not easy to win in this league" or "it's even harder to repeat" is parroted so often in regard to professional sports and their championships. Not to change the topic, and I'm sure it is to all the Braun, AD, and Lakers faithful as well, when you have a generational talent on your team, let alone two, you gotta go full force by any means necessary in order to give your guys an opportunity to compete for a championship. Anyways, now that I've gone on my tangent, what do you guys think about the Warriors' early season struggles? Think this is a part of the recent trend of established stars struggling this year? Yeah, don't worry, video coming out on that soon. Or maybe you think the Warriors are overblown and we should trust a literal NBA dynasty just a tad bit more. I'm open to the dialogue. Let me know what you think down below, and this video has been made by Underdog. Peace!